Hey everybody, Ryan Medora here, and welcome to a bass lesson about technique, something that is just so important that everybody wants to really get under their fingers, literally and figuratively. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm going to give you some exercises. If you want to get tab, notation, anything like that to accompany this video, head over to my Patreon page. You can support this channel there, get all the goodies. But in the meantime, we're going to specifically focus on our fretting hand technique and a couple of different positions, such as our 4-fret span, our 5-fret span, and the 3-fret span, which maybe you know about, maybe you don't. But I want to talk a little bit about how understanding when, how, where, what, all the different positions can kind of come into play in terms of us being able to navigate the fretboard with a little bit more ease. So one of the things that's really important is realizing that conventional wisdom is that we have 4-fret span technique. This is great. You should absolutely practice this. Everybody should know and be really comfortable with 4-fret span technique. What that means is that we have 4 fingers, minus our thumb's hanging out in the back here. But with our 4 fingers, we assign 1 finger per fret. And, if we play, for instance, a G major scale, we've kind of learned our standard 4-fret span technique for it, where we start with our middle finger and we go middle, pinky, index, middle, pinky, index, ring, pinky. And this sequence is basically taking us from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret using all 4 fingers, where any note that we hit on the 2nd fret is using our index finger, any note on the 3rd fret uses our middle finger, any note on the 4th fret uses our ring finger, and any note on the 5th fret uses our pinky. So this is just our standard 4-fret span technique. Here's a major scale. And that is kind of like the ground zero for bass technique. If you can't do this, where you properly assign each finger to the proper fret, you should practice this. Like, stop what you're doing, go practice this. Because it is a really important thing to establish good technique. But it's also not the only thing. So a thing about moving around the fretboard is realistically, we're not always going to be playing something that's just kind of like moving in what I think is horizontally across the fretboard over here. We want to sometimes be able to move vertically, meaning from lower notes to higher notes. That's why I think about using the term vertical. And in order to do that, we can take advantage of other positions. So I like to also practice my 5-fret span major scale. That involves a little bit of a shift and just like another way, another perspective to play the same thing. So when we talk about 5-fret span technique, what that really means is we're going a sequence of 5 frets. So in this case, for a G major scale, we're going to be moving from the 3rd fret, where our G is going to be, we're going to start with our index finger, and we're going to play up 2 notes on the 7th fret. So 3 up to 5 up to 7 is kind of like our sequence of our 5-fret span technique. So in order to do that, I'm going to play the same scale, a G major scale, but I'm going to be shifting my positioning a little bit, where I'm starting with my index finger, then I'm playing my scale degree 2 with my middle finger. This is going to be the A with my middle finger. Then I'm going to be reaching my pinky up and getting the B, or scale degree 3, and then I'm doing that same sequence on the next string. So you can hear as I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to scale degree 6, going with my index, middle, pinky, index, middle, pinky. And then as I'm here, I've reestablished my 4-fret span in a way where I can just go index, middle to finish up the scale. So again, we refer to this kind of as our 5-fret span. And you may find that if you're doing this and it's giving you pain or stretch or anything like that, it's probably because you're locking your hand a little bit. Maybe you're keeping it too stretched out, and maybe you're not moving your thumb enough. So you want to make sure that your thumb is kind of like keeping consistent with your middle finger and helping you maybe bounce. I'm not keeping my thumb all in one place. I'm letting my hand move all as a unit. So I'm keeping my thumb kind of in line with my middle finger as I'm moving around the fretboard. And I'm kind of shifting back a little bit or forward depending on the direction I'm going in. So this is what we refer to as 5-fret span technique, where again, we're kind of covering that kind of ground between a sequence of 5 frets. So from 3 to 7 in this case. Now, we also have what I love, the 3-fret span, which to me is a slightly contracted position where we have less stress on our hands. And this is really important if we're playing things like a blues box, if we're playing kind of like pentatonic fills, and especially if we're playing octaves. If you've found yourself playing octaves and going like this, nah, that's not what we want. You see how awkward my hand is, how my index finger is here and then my ring finger is over here. My hand is kind of cocked to the side. My wrist is down. We don't want that. Instead, we want to keep our fingers and our fret right over to the fretboard. So you can kind of see the difference between going and using my ring finger to using my pinky. See how little stress it seems is on my hand? That's a real thing. And so that's like kind of our 3 fret span where I'm using my rock and roll fingers, my index finger and my pinky, between 3 frets. So my index finger right now is on the G and I'm playing up to the higher G with my pinky. But this is a much more comfortable position to be in. And there are plenty of bass lines that kind of just feature movement over these 3 frets that don't require us to use our 4 fret span and will also put less stress on our hand if we play it this way. So never think that like you have to use a certain position. There are some bass lines where, yeah, it really is the best if you do, but there are plenty of other things, especially lines that are octave based, where it makes sense to not use 4 fret span, but to use this 3 fret span where we're kind of using our rock and roll fingers, as I said. So any kind of octave movement like this, really good to just use the index finger and our middle finger as opposed to using the index and the ring. This is something that I see players do a lot, and it will really put unnecessary strain on your hands. So another great thing about using this 3 fret span is you can kind of play pentatonic shapes in a really cool way. So if I were to play my G major pentatonic, I might kind of start with my 5 fret span shape. There's my G major scale, but I'm not going to need scale degree 4 or 7, so I'm just going to be playing 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 octave. And a cool slip slidey way to do that is to start with your index finger and then shift up a whole step and then go between your index and pinky for these other notes, and then you can land here with your index finger again. So you can kind of see that I'm using this 3 fret technique, and I'm kind of creating this box that I can be in by starting with an initial shift with my index finger. So here's my scale degree 1, shift, and I'm now here, and I'm using my index finger and pinky to play the rest of the scale. And the benefit of that is that, one, you can have different methods of articulation. You know, using a 3 fret span where you're primarily using your index and your pinky can let you do certain moves like hammer-ons and pull-offs. You know, you can play slides. It's something that I use a lot to kind of improve my articulation, get a little funky, a little like swanky with what I'm doing, as opposed to using the 4 fret span that might be a little blocky sounding or feeling at certain times. You know, in some bass lines, it's absolutely the right thing to do, but other times, you know, it might not be the right choice. So this is just like a kind of brief overview of a couple different instances where you can use different positions. You know, there are plenty of bass lines where the 4 fret span makes a lot of sense. Like, for instance, you know, the bass line to, Ain't Too Proud to Beg. That's a good one. That's totally a great 4 fret span exercise, you know, and you can kind of see that I'm playing in the key of C. I'm taking advantage of my 4 fret span, and it's the perfect way to play it. Then there are some bass lines that really, you know, benefit from playing with just a 3 fret span. So any kind of blues shuffle where I'm playing in the box, great for the 3 fret span. And then there might be also other bass lines that use the 5 fret span. Or I'm kind of just moving around a little bit. I'm getting vertical with what I'm doing. And so the whole point of this is so that you can understand that there isn't just one fretting hand technique that will be the all-encompassing way you play bass. It's really about figuring out how to get comfortable with different positions, to see different patterns, see different shapes, and put them to use in a way that makes sense for the articulation of a bass line and for your knowledge of being able to move around the fretboard. So I hope you dug this lesson. Head over to my Patreon page, grab some tab notation exercises, backing tracks, all that good stuff, and happy practicing, everybody. Keep it groovy.